Hello, this is an assessment of a Bechstein Model 2 upright piano that's 135 centimeters tall, made in about 1892, and it's a walnut, which is not uncommon for 1892, but not that common for a Bechstein Model 2. So at least we've seen mostly rosewood ones, so it's nice to get a Bechstein that's walnut. They're always very much sought after, so walnut is a beautiful wood. Now there is some damage here. There's some water damage on the side. Down the bottom corner here there's some damage as well, and it's rough here, and obviously got damage from the water coming down from above, I believe. So here you can see quite a lot of damage. The question is what to do with that. There's other aspects of the piano that's important to look at too, but so looking at the case first, you can see that it's damaged right through to the veneer. I think it's mostly the polish on the top, but we'd have to ask our polisher about that, whether this can be made good. I think it's got to be stripped, really. The problem with stripping it is then matching it in with the rest of the piano, if that's all you're going to do. It's an opportunity to repolish the whole piano, obviously. This music stand, by the way, has been changed. That's not the original one. It would have had a swing desk here, and you can see where the swing desk was, and it's been taken off. Now, it's taken off because the music wasn't sitting very well on that desk, and this apparently was put on by the firm that sold the piano, Male Pianos, and I do recollect Male Pianos. Yes, it's actually got a sticker inside, so Male Pianos in Stony Stratford, and I think I met Male, and the name is on certain pianos as well, so he tried to make some new pianos. If you're familiar with that in the trade, love to hear your comments. I think we saw one or two with Male written on them. We'll look at the inside later on. Now, if the whole piano was repolished, it would be difficult to match this in, so that would be one factor. It would be nice to find an original swing desk just to put it back to its original state, that was worn up, but we haven't got one in stock apparently. If you're in the trade watching this and say, oh, I've got a spare worn up music desk, that would be really excellent, but that's probably hoping too much. Now, there is a difference in colour here where it's been kept up, and you often get that, so it's not disastrously different, but slightly different. As I say, there is an opportunity to repolish this, which would look very stunning. So the question of whether we can make good that damage or without repolishing the whole piano. I have to talk to our polisher about that too. This pedal here has obviously been used a lot and has worn right through, it seems. I've never seen anything quite like that before. We could recap both of the pedals, could try and repair that so it looks a little bit better. If we're repolishing the piano, it'd be nice to do that, to talk to our team about that. So you can see the rest of the case is not really any problem on it, and the other side is fine as well. Now, looking at the inside of the piano, it has a major issue which we talked about before on the models 1 to 5 before 1902, when they changed to models 6 to 10, and the tuning pins are going loose because they are oversized pins. If they were originals, my tuning lever would wobble on them a bit, but they're absolutely tight fit. They're oversized, as big as you can get them almost. So, and they're not tight, unfortunately. You can hear that they're out of tune because the tuning pins are loose. So if you tuned it up, you'd still find that they were loose. And we've had to replace many rest planks on these older models. Even when the piano is fully restored, sometimes we've had to replace rest planks, and we do 4 or 5 a year of those, I think. So these the tuning pins are larger, but they're not holding, and they're maximum size at the base here anyway, so that would be impossible to restring and then put another pin in, because you had to go up in pin size. But with a new rest plank, you wouldn't necessarily you would obviously go down in pin size because it's a new rest plank, and we've mentioned that many times before. There's plenty of videos about that. Looking at the action in general, it's very stiff and not some of the notes aren't playing at all, responding, and the jacks here are tight, they're not going back under. There's lots of tight pins really, so you can see that one there's not pushing itself back under. Sorry, it's out of focus slightly. Let's get it back in. So if you watch it, the jack's not really returning, so because the pin here is too tight. So there's lots of work to do on the action. These tapes, although they're new, I think that for some reason or other they're very tight, and we've tried pulling one off and it broke almost, so I think they're going to have to be replaced as well. You can see this is a rocker system, and some of these have been replaced, so I think we're going to find various things as we go along. Underneath the keys, there's no moth, which we've checked that, but the felts have been replaced underneath, and the key dip isn't correct on many of them, so there's lots of things. We'll show you on the worksheet to listed them all down. These are original strings, by the way. If you look at the bottom here, you can see the way they've been finished off. So it's a little bit on the dark side here. There we are, and you can see they've been finished off typical original Bechstein bass strings, beautifully done, and the tone of these strings is excellent too, which raises the question as to whether we are going to replace the strings. It's the soundboard, by the way. When we restring the piano, we'll be sorting out any I don't think that's affecting the tone, but you can see those cracks are not that sightly, so we would redo the soundboard at the same time, redo any of the cracks, shim them. We've seen that many times before. These are replaced key tops actually, so that's actually not a bad thing nowadays. Ivory is often replaced and needs to be, especially if it's going to be exported, so it's not original ivory. The string tone on original Bechstein strings is excellent. Restringing these will add a bit more strength, but some of the depth, the original tone, you would lose slightly. You could possibly keep the original strings, and they're all there. That is just a possibility. Normally we would restring the whole piano. That's a question really. If you're piano tuning, you know what I mean, hopefully, that the original string sound is very beautiful, though they're beginning to lose some of their tone here. It's a question that's a very difficult decision to make, but normally if you're restringing, you can keep these strings. It's possible you can unwind them and put them back up, put the wrest-plank on. It's a bit more complicated, but we have done it before. Usually when the piano's been fully restored and it's got new strings on, we've done that sometimes. These strings could be changed, definitely. They don't have a very excellent tone. They are replaced strings anyway, so these have been replaced, and actually I think they're galvanized. I'm pretty sure they're galvanized, they feel like it. So those are galvanized strings put on maybe in the 70s. Not sure when galvanization was done mainly. Again, if you're in the trade, please comment, but obviously they didn't change the bass strings at the same time. By the way, these older Bechsteins, a lot of Bechsteins have tied actions, including grands right up to the 1920s, some of them. We've quite used to rock, what we call a rocker system here rather than capstans, and you have to untie these ties to get the whole thing out. It's a little bit more complicated, and sometimes on grands we'll replace the rocker system, but on this obviously you wouldn't be able to do that because these long prolongs are necessary because of the height of the piano. We thought these hammers are in good condition and didn't need replacing, although the tone of the last string, this last break point here, that's quite common. Tonal problems on Bechsteins there. It's very common, and I think we'd be inclined to sort of recap the bridge and see if we can just get a bit more down bearing at that point. And the dampers, they look quite good. They've been replaced, but my colleague who's been looking at the piano with me, is used to doing the actions, thinks they would benefit from replacing. It's very difficult to match the old match dampers with new strings if you replace the strings. So the main really essential work is the wrest-plank, but there's lots of regulation and lots of sticky notes, so there's a lot of other work as well. It says here add Cat's clips. We were just wondering what to do about this music stand, because these are actually very far apart. They're normally set at about a foot or just over a foot, and they're about 16 inches, so that's too far apart really for normal use. So you could have some Cat's clips, and I mentioned those before we got them for sale. They're basically slidable, instead of attached, they're just slidable book holders, and they're really useful, so you have those as well, or possibly use these holes here which are extra. We could put another book holder in there, so there's various possibilities to think about, and whatever would be most useful obviously. I think I've mentioned everything that's on here, so we have to choose between either making good or repolishing the whole piano. It will repolish very beautifully. I have to talk to our polisher about whether we can make it good without repolishing, and there was a dull break point here, so we need to do some down bearing. Sorry if I've gone too fast for you, but if you've got any more questions, then please do let me know. I didn't bother to measure the down weight, by the way. It was so heavy on C here, and it's so sticky that very difficult to measure anyway, but that's certainly much too high, so we want them all set sort of say 48 to 52 grams, that kind of range. If you want a light action, then please let us know, then we'll set it lighter or heavier action, and we're trying to make them as even as possible, like a new piano basically. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention was about the stairs. It's got to go downstairs, and the stairway, I think I'm going to just show that on the video a bit. Now in this room the doorway has actually been altered, but it is more than 66, which is the width of the piano, so it's about 67, 68. And then looking round here, fortunately there's no problem with ceiling height. These houses are designed, and all of this area here has very high ceilings, so that's not a problem. But the stairway isn't too narrow, it's just the turn is going to be the problem. So if you have pianos upstairs and you've got a problem with your piano and you need to get it downstairs, sometimes it can be really problematic. Obviously it requires a really experienced team to get it down, and they're going to be worried about touching the walls and so on and damaging the carpet. So it isn't an easy job, but there's enough width here, and I think this turn is sufficient to get it. Piano will be put on its end, I think, and then going right through the rest of the house is no problem. So that's a Bechstein Model 2, wonderfully designed piano with lots of issues which I've mentioned. I hopefully gone through them all, and when we work on it we may discover something else, but I think obviously the notes are so sticky you can hardly play them, and not repeating, and that's to do with sticky centres mostly, and I've mentioned everything I think, but the underlying tone of the piano is very promising. I think we would replace the bass strings, that's my feeling on the option, but it's a bit agonising to decide really sometimes. I can't really play enough to get an idea of the tone, and there's the break point, which is very hard tone, so it needs a bit more down bearing so that the sound carries across the soundboard. It doesn't improve it 100%, but it will get it much better, I think. So I hope that's helpful. If you've got a Bechstein that needs restoring, these older Bechsteins restore very well. The wrest-plank's a common problem on the pre-1902 Bechsteins. So please do let me know if you are trained the trade and have some experience with these, or comments to make. It would be really useful to know. Thank you very much for listening.